Today, we're bringing you a report of enormous importance, one that could reshape the lives of hundreds of thousands of people who call Britain their home. For 90 intense minutes, Parliament wrestled with one question at the very heart of immigration policy. Should the promise of settlement after 5 years be kept, or should migrants be forced to endure a decade of temporary status before being allowed to settle permanently? This is not an abstract discussion. It's about your future. It's about whether the United Kingdom should honour the promises it made only a few years ago, or whether it may quietly backtrack, casting people into years of anxiety and uncertainty. In this video, I'll walk you through the parliamentary debate, breaking down the arguments, the stories, and most critically, the government's official response. Their words, and even more tellingly, their silences, hold the key to what happens next. This debate did not emerge by accident. It was triggered by the power of public pressure. 2 petitions, each carrying well over 100,000 signatures. The first petition, signed by more than 157,000 people, called on the government to maintain the 5-year settlement route for skilled worker visa holders. These are doctors, engineers, care workers, scientists, IT professionals, the very people filling shortages and keeping essential industries afloat. The second petition gathered over 108,000 signatures in defence of the 5-year route for Hong Kong BNO visa holders. That community, in particular, has a special story because they were not invited to Britain simply as part of economic migration, but because the UK made them a moral promise that if they fled the growing repression in Hong Kong, this country would offer not just refuge, but security after 5 years. Together, those petitions forced Parliament to publicly debate the idea of scrapping 5-year indefinite leave to remain, replacing it with a harsher 10-year route. For many families, the difference between 5 years and 10 years is not a mere matter of waiting a bit longer. It is a difference between building a life with confidence and living in limbo. Imagine arriving in Britain with a clear understanding. If you commit, if you pay your taxes, if you work in the NHS or in one of our industries, devote yourself for 5 years, you can finally put down permanent roots. For many, mortgages are taken, careers are mapped, children are enrolled in schools based on this timeline. And now to change the rules halfway through isn't just about numbers or statistics. It reshuffles entire lives. MPs in Parliament emphasise this with stories drawn from their own constituents. One particularly powerful account was given through a composite case study of Anna Kaur, a senior registrar from India, who uprooted her husband and 2 children to work in a Manchester hospital. She sold her family home and left everything familiar behind, knowing Britain needed her skills and promising her permanent settlement after 5 years. Now, with the prospect of that shifting to 10 years, her family's long-term future is plunged into uncertainty. Her children grow up asking when their home will finally be their own. Her husband wonders whether their sacrifices were in vain. And she wonders whether a government once so keen to recruit her still values her at all. During the debate, MPs attacked the policy proposal from 3 principal angles: the economic cost, the human cost, and the moral cost. 1. Economic cost. The United Kingdom is in a global race for talent. Our competitors from Canada to Australia, from Germany to the Netherlands are actively streamlining their residency pathways. And Britain? It risks sending the opposite message. Why, MPs asked, would a bright AI researcher or a biotech entrepreneur choose Britain if they know they'll spend a decade in limbo here, when elsewhere, settlement is swifter, clearer, and more secure? Leading economists warn of a chilling effect. Not only will fewer talented people choose Britain, but those already here might decide it's simply not worth staying. A decade of temporary visas, reapplications, costly fees, and no guarantee of permanence works like a push factor, driving professionals to relocate, taking their skills and contributions with them. And this matters at a time when Britain faces acute shortages in healthcare, social care, engineering, and technology. Extending the ILR timeline to 10 years may appear to reduce migration statistics in the short term, but at the cost of deterring exactly the kind of people the economy desperately needs. 2. Human cost MPs coined the phrase, the decade of darkness, to describe life under a 10-year settlement route. For an entire decade, families are left unable to secure mortgages, closed out of the property market, prevented from establishing stability. Imagine a child who begins school in Britain. Under a 10-year route, they may finish school without their parents even knowing if the family will be allowed to stay permanently. All the while, visa holders pay the same taxes as British citizens but without being granted the long-term certainty that allows a true sense of belonging. Stories of stress, anxiety, marriages under strain, and people deferring life plans dominated the debate. The mental health implications are immense. Living under constant renewal, constant checks, and the recurring costs, often many thousands of pounds in visa fees, becomes a relentless burden. 3. Moral cost for BNO holders. Perhaps the most passionate arguments came in relation to the Hong Kong BNO community. This is not a case of merely economic migration. It is rooted in Britain's responsibilities under the Sino-British Joint Declaration, the international treaty that set out Hong Kong's freedoms after 1997. When China breached those freedoms, Britain responded with the BNO visa as an offer of sanctuary, stability, and settlement after 5 years. To take that away now, MPs said, would represent not only a domestic betrayal, but also an international one. It would send a signal to the world that Britain's word cannot be trusted. For those who fled Hong Kong at great personal risk, stripping away the 5-year settlement route would be nothing less than cruel. And then came the moment everyone was waiting for, the government's formal response. The immigration minister rose to his feet. All he needed to say was one sentence. Any future changes will not apply retrospectively to those already on the 5-year route. But he refused to give that commitment. Instead, his remarks were couched in highly bureaucratic language. He acknowledged the anxiety, he thanked petitioners, and he spoke of the government's wider objective to reduce net migration. He floated the phrase a new earned settlement system without providing detail on what that actually means, and he emphasised that any final decision would be subject to a future consultation. But when pressed directly, would those already here be protected? He avoided the question. By not ruling out retrospective changes, the government has in effect done the opposite. It has deliberately kept the option alive. If ministers truly intended to protect existing visa holders, they could have closed the issue with a single clarifying sentence. The silence spoke volumes. So what are the takeaways? What does this mean for you, sitting perhaps 3 years into what you thought would be a 5-year journey? First, the fight is not over. It is entering a new and perhaps more dangerous phase. The government has shown it is willing to absorb the criticism and keep the policy on the table. Uncertainty is now part of its strategy. Second, all eyes turn to the upcoming consultation. Historically, consultations have been moments when affected communities can shape policy, yet they are also moments when governments hope public fatigue will limit engagement. If people fail to respond in large numbers, Whitehall will treat silence as consent. Third, individuals must prepare for the worst. That means keeping impeccable records, payslips, tax documents, proofs of residence, travel records. If the bar for settlement is raised, applicants who are impeccably documented will be best placed to succeed. Beyond the direct impact on visa holders, this episode calls into question the way Britain approaches migration promises. Policy shifts are one thing, retrospective changes are another. If people who came in good faith, following the rules and trusting the state, see the rules rewritten beneath them, the long-term reputational cost to the UK could be severe. Economists warn, attracting global talent depends not just on today's rules, but on trust that rules will not be changed unfairly tomorrow. International observers are also watching Britain's treatment of Hong Kong residents closely. It touches not only on domestic immigration, but foreign policy credibility. The debate in Parliament was important. It gave voice to the concerns of migrants, professionals, and communities across Britain. It revealed broad cross-party resistance to a 10-year route. But ultimately, the government sat back in silence on the one question that mattered most. By refusing to guarantee the 5-year promise for those already here, ministers have chosen uncertainty. That uncertainty is deliberate. And it carries consequences, not just for the individuals affected, but for Britain's reputation, economy, and moral standing. So where does this leave us? The ball is now in the government's court. But it's also in your court. Petitions, engagement, testimonies, all of them matter more than ever as the consultation approaches. For now, the 5-year route remains official. But the future? That hangs in the balance. Stay with us, here on Daily Visa News, as we continue to track every statement, every policy paper, and every hint. Because this is not just about law, it's about lives. And about whether this country, the United Kingdom, is prepared to keep its promises. Thank you for watching.